Welcome to 2021 and the videos carry on. I've got a 175 engine here, original one that we started last year. I think you might have seen me put the engine mounts in it. So we're now getting back stuck into it, and our first thing we're going to do is the main bearings. So let's go ahead and do it. Right, I've been inspecting the inside surface where the bearing's going to sit here. Let's see if we can get a bit more light on it, if anybody can see. And it actually looks like the bearing may have been spinning in it. It's got score marks in it. So we're going to have to check our bearing, how it fits in here. Because if it's a poor fit, we're going to have to do something about it. Because this needs to be a tight knocking fit. Okay, we've just unpackaged our bearing, and we've got the ZZ that's got the seals in it. Now, you need to remove these seals, never leave them in, because what it does, even if you're thinking of leaving one side in and having extra protection, it doesn't. What it does, it dries it stops lubrication from getting to your oil seal in the casing, and then the oil seal fails. This is a no-no. It's okay if it's going on a shaft, driving somewhere exterior, and it's not got lubrication from a casing like we've got, but on our engine we need to have oil flow across the bearings, and we need to have oil flow onto the back of the seal to lubricate it, to stop it drying out. Because what happens if you leave this seal in, you get a space between this seal and the other seal that hardly gets any lubrication in there and heats up, and the seal, your drive side seal, then fails, because I've had it before. So take them out. Okay, I checked the bearing and I think it's not too bad a fit. Now, I didn't clean up the inside of the surface and try and make it look nice, because what you do is you take away material, and that's the last thing we want to do in this case, because you end up getting a slacker fit. So it's best leaving it as it is. I don't like using bearing fit because engines are hot and bearing fit fails under high temperatures. So I steered away from bearing fit. You can use bearing fit in certain places like wheel bearings because they don't get hot. Okay, but in an engine it gets hot, and that means the bearing fit will fail. So what I'm going to do on this is we're going to knock it in with this big drift, because we're going to warm it up first, a little bit of heat on it, and we're going to knock it in with this big drift because I want to feel the fit as it's being knocked in. Now, you can buy pullers to pull things in, but I disagree. Sometimes pullers aren't the right thing to use to put them in, or presses, right? Because when you knock something in, you get the feel of how tight that bearing is fitted. If it's too tight to fit, you realise it, because it's becoming too difficult to knock in. So therefore the track will get pressurised. When you pressurise a bearing track, the bearing will fail. So it needs to be the correct fit. By knocking it in, I'm going to get the feedback that I require to know that that bearing is a correct fit. So that's why I'm knocking this one in. Okay, and that's fully home, and it felt pretty good. So I know that bearing now is going to be all right. Okay, that's our bearing fully home and ready for us to pull the crank in. I said pull it in because we're not going to knock it in. That'll be pulled in because we don't want to distort the webs in any way. So we're going to pull the crank in. Right, we've put our crank seal in. So you've seen a million times people put them in. Always put some lubrication on the lid of the crank seal. That's very important. Yep, that'll do. Right, here's the crank that we're going to be fitting in this engine. It is an SIP SIP crank, 116mm rod and 60mm stroke GP. So that's the baby that's going in. We've got to fit out. We're going to fit our inner track first before we drop it in. So that's a little job we've got to do first. And it comes with, let's see, two bearings. Comes with the wide bearing and the narrow one, depending on what piston you're running. So you've got a choice of little end bearings. So we'll fit our inner track now. Right, here's the bearing we're using. It's a NU2205, which is the wider bearing for the GP. So I always like to keep my bearings not just on the table but on top of something so it never touches anything with any grit on it or gets contaminated in any way. So we're going to just drop our crank on our vise with just a little bit of cloth and just slightly nip it just to hold it in place. Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to get our inner track, sorry. Just zoom in a little bit, shall we? There we go. That's a bit better, isn't it? So we've got our track here. So I'm just going to drop that there. We're going to need a set of long nose pliers. These should do fine. Then we're just going to warm our track up. Don't allow it to go yellow. Just heat it enough. If you start to go yellow, you've actually started to change the properties. So we don't want it to go yellow. We're just going to heat it enough to drop on. Okay, and that's it, it's fitted. Easy peasy. So, no yellowing of the bearing, just the right amount of heat and it will drop straight onto your crank. Right, so just put a little bit of grease around the back end of this and we'll just put it into position. Try and get it to at least start a little bit and be nice and square. Then we're going to put our little homemade tool on. Just spin it around a bit. Smaller socket. Okay, so I'm just going to centre it up. Put our 14mm spanner on and just make sure it's nice and square and just start winding it in. Shouldn't be any pressure, too much pressure. It should just go in nice and even. There we go. Right, okay, that's our crank fitted. It should now turn nice and smoothly with no pressure or nothing catching. And you want to put some feeler gauges down in here to check you've got enough clearance. And I like to have at least 1mm of clearance. So it fits in easily. I think that's the 1mm. Even that goes in nicely. Just give it a check because my eyesight's not so good anymore. Yeah, 1mm. So 1mm goes in nicely and easily, so we've got plenty enough clearance for any expansion. So that will do good. Perfect. Happy with that? So that's the end of this. Well, that's it. As far as I'm going today. So I'm just going to put a few tools away. And tidy up a bit. And then that's it till the next episode. Don't forget to subscribe. I hope you enjoyed my little video. Right guys, I hope that was a bit helpful for you. Short video, putting your crank in, putting your bearing in and your seal and stuff. Not too much. Hope you enjoyed it, so don't forget to subscribe and follow my channel. See you all later.